This is the Wally and Methot Show. Now, here are your hosts, Brent Wallace and Mark Methot.
Welcome to the Wally and Methot Show, brought to you by sportsinteraction.com. Go to sportsinteraction.com/Wally and Methot for the most competitive odds, as sportsinteraction.com is Canada's online casino and sportsbook. I'm Brent Wallace. He's Mark Methot. Meth, I've got one question for you before we begin this show. What did you do to your face?
So you want to cover that, eh? What?
You look like a wrestler.
Yeah, I'm doing the game on Saturday, and obviously they like us clean shaven. So just to have fun with my wife, I decided to leave the handlebars last night, and she hates it, just absolutely hates it. So despite her, I'm going to leave it on until Saturday.
This is why, if you're listening on the podcast, you should switch over to the YouTube version to get a full look of Mark Methot's handlebar. Do we just call it the handlebar? Is it a goatee?
Handlebars. Yeah.
Okay.
Handlebars.
Yeah. I can't grow it, so I'll act impressed.
You can't? Yeah, you can. You got like what, 15 years on me?
Yeah, but it takes me about 15 years to get to where you're at.
Fair enough.
All right. But we've got a great show coming up. Noodles is back. Jay McLennan, we call this Noodles 2.0. His first interview was fantastic, and so is the second. Craig's going to stop by with some more chat. Plus, we've got Bonesaw Sauce is back with some trivial trivia. We're giving away some Christmas prize packs, we'll call them, and they're going to be here for a couple of weeks. Don't forget, also, you can shop at gongshowgear.com. Get it in now so you can get the shipping done in time for Christmas. They've also got BOGO deals going on for them. All right, Matt, before we get to headlines, I got a question for you, and that is, you saw the Trevor Zegras goal, I'm assuming, this past week, where he does the Michigan, but then Pat, right? If you're a defenseman in the National Hockey League, are you mad about this? Because purists get all upset when we try to do something different in the game, and I'm curious of what your reaction is.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. And they showed, I believe the following day or 2 days later, they were showing other junior teams practicing it in warmups and stuff. So it's infectious, right? I think that creativity grabs headlines, and it's fun to watch. I'm a huge fan. I don't see how you could argue against that. You mentioned purists. I'd love to find some online, Wally. You could show me the way and I'll go argue with them. But I think in this case, I love it. It's creative. It's exciting. People love that stuff.
But you know what I'm talking about. Like one time Kaspars Daugavins put his toe on the puck for a shootout and did a spin around, and people got like, how did he do that to the game? Or I even remember, I think like someone shot through his legs one time. And so how do you disrespect the game like this? I'm like, let's have a little entertainment value, can we?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the Kaspars goal, because I think I saw it on like a top 10 last week on TV and totally forgot about it. And I was there for that when he was doing it, because he was doing it all the time in practice. And I think Mac was just kind of encouraging him, saying, okay, it's working for you. Let's see how you can do it. And I believe in the one game that he did do it, it could have been against Boston, I think.
Yes, I think it's
he tried. Yeah, he tried it and almost had it. I think Rask got a toe on it. So again, I'm a big fan of that stuff. I think it's awesome. It gets people on their feet. It gets people talking. So I'm sure we're going to see more of it. Now, all these young kids that are coming into the league, Wally, they're so skilled that it wouldn't surprise me if we see a lot more of this, moving forward.
Okay, but how do you defend it?
I don't know, because you're not allowed to box out anymore, right? Well, you can box out, but they're very picky now, refereeing the refs. I mean, when it comes to trying to box guys out at net front. So they almost have their way at it. And I honestly don't believe there's a whole lot you can do other than maybe try to push at them, deter them from standing there. But really, you don't want to get a penalty. So again, they may be doing this more often than not moving forward.
All right, we should probably try to get Kaspars Daugavins on the show. Was he fun to be around, or is he quiet, by the way?
He would bark when he would score a goal, and he went down the line, on the bench when we're touching gloves. Yeah. He was barking. It was bizarre, but he was a beauty. Guys loved him. He was a funny guy, and not like at all what I had pictured a Latvian to be like. Like there was no language barrier. He spoke perfect English. I know Craig was around him probably a lot more too, and I'm a huge fan of Doggy, and I played against him a little bit at the Worlds too when he was with Latvia. So I'm happy to see he's doing. He's a legend over there, apparently.
Yeah, and he's always been fun. But he's got that massive tattoo, I think, of Latvia or whatever it is on his back. Like it covers his entire back. Right? I could never. I'm too much of a sissy to get a tattoo. No chance.
Yeah.
It's a needle.
I have one on my back that I'm currently still trying to laser off. I think I got a couple more sessions and it's gone. Everyone's got nothing against people that have tats. I feel like we're going to alienate half our fan base if we start chirping people with tattoos.
No, I think they're great, but it would just never happen to me.
I know. And my wife would always say, well, yeah, but what are you going to look like when you're 50? I'm like, everyone's going to have them when we're 50. I don't see it looking bad. I think it looks cool, but I thought about getting a sleeve, not so much anymore. I feel like everyone's got them now. Right. So it's kind of lost its luster.
I feel like saying if we get like 10 million downloads, I'll get a tattoo of your face, but I'm slightly concerned about that. So I'm not doing it. All right, we're moving on. Island life, we're going to call this. The Sens saw their 3-game winning streak come to an end at the hands of the New York Islanders. You called it. You almost got the same score. You called 4-2. It ended up being 5-3. But they deserved, I think, a little bit better fate. No, the goaltending let them down here with Philip Gustafsson.
Yeah, that was the issue. I thought the team played pretty well. They were competing well. But yeah, the goaltending, and this is what we talk about from training camp up until now with the inconsistencies and how it could really kill the morale of a group, right? I'm not suggesting that game killed the morale of the group. No. They've had a really nice little stretch here, so I don't want to be negative. I thought they were good. But it's funny that day, right? We call the loss in the morning, and all of a sudden the guys over at Spit and Chicklets, like Bissonnette and Whitney, were both saying that it was lock of the century going with the Islanders too. So it made me feel a little more comfortable with my pick. And again, I don't like picking against Ottawa, but you had a very desperate Islanders team coming in there. I couldn't see how under Barry Trotz they would lose that game. I just couldn't see it. But you make a good point. Goaltending, I think, was the difference, right? And so I don't think that they have to hang their heads off that loss. That was a nice little stretch by the Ottawa Senators.
I might be fired from Sports Interaction. I did pick Ottawa. I thought they could pull this out despite being on
a back. And it was a good pick, Wally. Wally, that was a good pick.
I had a 50-50 chance.
Yeah, and you're like a beat down Islanders team against a red hot coming off a 3-game win streak Ottawa Senators. It made sense. So, it's okay though. We have you have an opportunity here Saturday to bounce back.
Well, that's why you've got the fancy graphic and I don't. So as we look at now, this is the 5th game in December. Obviously, Sens played pretty well in the month of December so far. We've seen the typical guys carrying them, though. Tkachuk's got 4 goals, 7 points to lead him. Norris, 3 goals, 5 points. Batherson, 1 goal, 5 points. Formanton is maybe a bit of a surprise in there. 3 goals, 4 points. Stützle and Chabot both have 4 points. The point I'm trying to make here is it's the same people for the most part. Is there a concern of perhaps a lack of depth scoring? If you don't have that number 1 line going every night, you're going to have tough nights.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are you surprised? I'm not surprised.
Well, but they need something is my point. Like,
I'm agreeing with you. No. And you raised an excellent point. And I was actually thinking about this a couple of nights ago, how top heavy they are, right? But I think this is a good thing for this group. I mean, I say this in a sense that this is not a playoff contending team right now. Yeah. So you like to see that top line, those young players, all your draft picks excelling and playing very good hockey right now. So that at least gives you comfort right there, knowing that moving forward, okay, you've got your number 1 line in place. You don't have to make any adjustments. This has been an issue with this team now for a few years where, they were lacking a legitimate top line with a legitimate top center. That's okay. The way I look at it, like Nick Paul and Connor Brown, in my opinion, that's like a legitimate third line. Those are legitimate third line wingers on a really good team, right?
Yeah.
So right now, people are kind of dwelling on, the lack of point production. And I know the name with Nick Paul's been floating around with potential trade bait at deadline. I wouldn't move him. I mean, these are pieces that you have in place moving forward. They're just not being properly utilized. And that's nothing against DJ. That's just the lack of depth that you have right now. But now that Tim Stützle is a legitimate center, his numbers are better in the middle. You've got your number 2 center in place. If not for Shane Pinto, at least, you've got your centerman finally solidified moving forward over the next couple of years, assuming that those, Tim Stützle, Shane Pinto are those guys. And I think they are. So,
and Pinto's Pinto's a much more legit third line center, right? Like he's got that defensive checking role in him.
Yeah.
You can see it in his game. So
imagine, So imagine, and I don't know, you'd have to go after 2 legitimate players to fill in those top 2 slots, but imagine having a line of Nick Paul, Shane Pinto and Connor Brown as your third line. Like now I don't know that that's going to be the case. And I don't know if the Ottawa Senators are going to go find 2 legitimate top 6 wingers this offseason.
They're still trying to find one since the beginning of last season.
Yeah, I know. And I think they're more likely going to get that in the summertime during free agency. There's no need to make moves now. And I know a lot of media types have been talking about this, and I'm basically echoing what they've said in that, you don't need to go after anybody right now. I think right now you're just looking for your core pieces to keep progressing forward. Wins or losses, obviously you want to win. You want the group to learn how to win. Yeah. But as long as your core pieces are progressing well, and you're seeing it now with Stützle, you're seeing it with all the top line guys, that's good. I think you stay the course, play out the year, and then, visit those options in the summer.
I'll point out the Norris line this season is that includes Batherson and Tkachuk has combined for 44% of all the Sens goals.
44%.
Yeah. So wow. 27 of the 62 goals have been scored by one of those three players.
Wally, what would that be? I'm putting you on the spot. What do you have those numbers in front of you with regards to the rest, like in comparison to the rest of the league with top lines? Do we know that?
No. Shoot. I saw it somewhere. I think I only work half days.
I'm just wondering where they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to put a full day of work in to find that out. So yeah.
No. And this is on me. I'm the one trying to.
No.
I'm basically I'm siphoning all your work right now. So I want to make it clear. I've got no work.
I believe 5-on-5 goals. They are third overall in the league. I think that was on TSN in the game the other night.
Wow.
Yeah, I think John Rustin from TSN had dug that up. So I know it's available. I'll do better next time. I'm sorry.
No, but the takeaway, I guess, in closing with that top line, this is really good. This is what you want. And I'm surprised, like even with Tkachuk, the scoring touch that he's had and been able to continue with, I mean, it's so impressive because you watch his style and you don't think that he's going to pot as many goals as he has been, right? Because he's kind of got that unorthodox skating style. He's hunched over.
Yeah.
It's not always very pretty, but he gets the job done. It's wild.
Well, the other thing too is you saw it. We always talked about Alfie being the big one. Like if you miss training camp and you try to come back, it's a grind. B, you're likely to get injured early on. We've seen it time and time again. I don't know that we've appreciated how well he's just acclimated back into that lineup.
Yeah, he's a tough son of a bitch, man. Like he's I got to give that to him. Like between him and I know Batherson was out for a little bit too, but I love how tough and strong that top line is. And we talked about this in the past. They have size.
Yeah.
Batherson's a big guy. Norris is a machine. Tkachuk's a big boy. Like that's a legitimate playoff line. If these guys ever do make the postseason here over the next couple seasons, that's a kind of line that you will not see disappear. Like they're going to continue to play this way because they have the physical edge to them, that hard-nosed aspect around net front. They're hard to play against. So that's really exciting.
Unfair question. Is this the best top line we've seen in Ottawa since the Spezza, Heatley, Alfredson line?
Oh,
and I think it is.
Is this just like a spur of the moment thing where we're kind of all hung up on them? I don't know.
And that's the thing. We may overvalue them. And we're talking about a 50 goal scorer and a Calder Trophy winner who scored 1,000 points in the National Hockey League, and Jason Spezza, who is one of the best playmakers in the game. Like, I get that that's a huge leap, but my point is, I can't think of another line that's come through Ottawa since then that's had any kind of talent level like this three.
No. Now I might be mistaken, but I'm trying to look back now at all those years that I was here, and then a little afterwards and prior.
Like Kyle Turris, Derek Brassard, Mika Zibanejad.
No. Nothing comes. No. Those guys, and I love them. Like Brass, one of my boys. Turris, one of my boys. But this Tkachuk, Norris, Batherson line, I don't think anything comes close. Right now, you look at them; they're dangerous every time they're out there, especially in the offensive zone. When they start running their cycle and finding those little. And then we talked about that last show, and sure enough, last game. I don't know if it was Norris. I think it was Norris that found Tkachuk right in that little soft spot for that little one-timer. That's what they do, and they're so good at it. So you're right, Wally. It's a good point. I think that's probably one of the best, probably the best top line since Heatley and Spezza's line for sure.
Yeah. I want to bring up a point. So we tend to always think of or talk a lot about Batherson and Tkachuk, both big size, and they're both putting up points. But I think Josh Norris, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is overshadowed a little bit by the two of them. Now, he recently just played his 82nd and 83rd game, so a full NHL season. His numbers are better than Tkachuk, Batherson, and then Stützle's only played 77. Josh Norris, people may not know, has more points than Brady Tkachuk through 83 games of their career, right? Like, I just think that, and he's got 28 goals. He's a legit 30 goal scorer. And he gets overshadowed because I think the other two. This means nothing to our show, but I found this very entertaining. And I looked up Urban Dictionary's definition of Josh. And so if you'll think back to our interview we had.
You're not doing one of these. All right.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
This is so good. Josh is a sensitive, caring guy who will do anything to solve problems. Although he may come across as overprotective, but all he wants to do is make sure that the ones he loves are safe and well. Joshes are normally very attractive and they have great eyes. He also is an extremely romantic. This is good. But 100% of the time you'll find Josh, you will not regret it. And most definitely he have the perfect relationship. Trust me, Joshes are worth the wait. So yeah, Josh Norris is the perfect fit.
Yeah. Aside from the fact that that's complete horseshit, I think there are some maybe resemblances to Josh Norris. Listen, you're right though. He's a legitimate one center. And he gels perfectly with Tkachuk and Batherson. He's been terrific. You're right. Falls under the radar a little bit because of Tkachuk and, the training camp stuff that was going on and then coming in, getting the captaincy. Batherson's been playing very well. So, but this is the best case scenario that's happening here. And I know I'm repeating myself, but you finally have an established number one line and they're young, they aren't going anywhere. So you have these guys for the next potential 10 years.
Well, hang on a second.
Well, you think they're going to have an issue re-signing him?
Well, so this leads into my point here. So, Josh Norris is up for a contract. He's an RFA. So if we look from the 2017 draft, he is 5th overall in points per game. So it goes Cale Makar, Jason Robertson, Elias Pettersson, Nick Suzuki, and Josh Norris. Nico Hischier was taken 1st overall. He's at 0.63. Norris is at 0.64 points per game. So Makar got a 6-year, $54 million deal. Pettersson got 3 years, 11.25. Suzuki, 8 years, 63. And Nico Hischier got 7 years at 50.75. Massive deals. So where does Josh Norris fall in this? Is he under Drake Batherson? Does he make that kind of, where is he at? And this is an interesting, can you put that much money in your top line?
I don't know. Drake's starting to look like a bit of a steal, isn't he?
He's a full steal. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you got to think, and this depends on how hard Josh Norris plays ball when it comes to the negotiations. It all comes down to the player and what he's comfortable with signing, right? So you're going to have agents in your ear. And at the end of the day, when they're dangling that long-term carrot in front of you and you're a young player and all you can think about is security, right? And I know that Tkachuk to me was a bit of an outlier because he's got so much, they have so much experience in the family. So, and he's a confident guy. So he was willing to roll the dice, do a little bridge deal. He was willing to do whatever it took. And he ends up with a big deal because of that. Right. So it all comes down to what Josh Norris is willing to do. I'm not in the belief that any player should ever take a hometown discount. I think I did that a little bit, but I was also just, seeing that contract dangling and I could think immediately security. I wanted that. Josh Norris is young. He probably knows what he's worth. I'm not a number cruncher by any means, so I can't pretend to know what I'm talking about right now as far as what his number should be. I don't know. I'd have to really break down all the comparables and go through them, but they're going to have to pay him, Wally. You're going to use your number one center. More responsibility than the wingers. It's a tougher position. You have to be responsible in your own zone. You have to be able to play two ways up and down the ice and work the middle of the ice, dish pucks out, get your guys, know your assignments. It's a little more complicated. You got to be good on draws. They're going to have to pay the guy. And I don't see how the organization can get away with not doing so. And I believe they want to, right? Because this is finally, you have your number one line. You have no choice. I'm not going to elaborate any further.
Yeah.
Their hands are tied. Josh Norris holds all the cards.
I just find it interesting. They've got to figure out, is he worth more than Drake Batherson at 4.975 and where that fits in?
Of course he is.
Okay, then.
Well, he isn't a better player, but he's worth more than that, right? I don't know that you should even compare to Batherson. You got to look at all his how many players in this position are playing center right now making, whatever amount they're making. Those are the guys you're going to have to look at. You can't look at Drake Batherson. That deal is just a steal, period.
Okay. Batherson and Tkachuk combined for like 13.2 million. So add another 6 million in there. And you're at
it's an expensive number
million.
one line.
Yeah. So that's all my point is. All right.
No, I get it.
The headline's brought to you by BEI, Bonesaw Excavating Inc. BonesaWexcavating.com, helping to shape the Ottawa Valley. They've done a fantastic job of helping out with Christmas Santa Claus parades, by the way, in the Ottawa Valley. Coming up, we've got Noodles 2.0. Jamie McLennan stops by. Of course, he's from TSN, if you don't know, and also from this fantastic show, The Overdrive. That is brought to you by Whitewater. So go to Whitewater, shop whitewater.ca. They've got a thing called Santa's Favorites, where they include 6 cans of beer and a forest-friendly tree coaster. It's just under $30. Free shipping. They got local delivery, and you can pick it up at 78 Pembroke Street in Cobden. Stay for the great food, by the way. Fantastic restaurant. Also, you can use you can use the Wally Methot coupon code. Shopwhitewater.ca. Brewed by friends for friends. Whitewater beer. Time now for Pearls of Wisdom on Jamie McLennan, brought to you by sportsinteraction.com. All right, here we go. 13 shutouts in his NHL career. That's the second among the 1991 draft picks. Chris Osgood is first, by the way, he had 50. 12% of his career goals allowed to Hall of Famers, 74 of 617. 2 undefeated teams. So he did not lose to Calgary or the Ottawa Senators. And finally, a 1.48 goals support average in 2001 with the Wild. That's the lowest in the NHL the last 30 years, by the way. Jay McLennan. So when we come back, our interview with Noodles 2.0. You're watching the Wally Methot Show. Welcome back to the Wally Methot Show. Time now for the Whitewater Chat, and pleased to be joined once again. We call this show Noodles 2.0 as we welcome in Jamie McLennan from Toronto. Noodles, welcome back to the show. People have been asking for you, and we finally got you back on.
I'm very excited to be back on. I'll be honest. I was getting a little nervous because your guest list was getting very lengthy. And I was like, I think these guys are just going to dust me, to the point where I put out a tweet because I bought one of the t-shirts, the hashtag, and
Absolute
I got
Pigeon.
stopped in Absolute Pigeon. I got stopped in the grocery store by somebody going like, what does that mean? I'm like, it's an inside saying, and I was like, I can't even, how do you explain to somebody, the hashtag Absolute Pigeon? Like, you can't, right? It's just kind of an inside joke. And this guy's staring at me. I'm like, okay, what's going down? The guy who actually walks up to me, it's like, Absolute Pigeon. I'm like, yeah, you know it? Like, don't know it. What does it mean? I'm like, can't explain it. I don't have time, so it was, but I'm excited to be back, and you're right. It's been a while, and I was getting nervous that I was going to, continued to get bumped. No,
you have a standing invitation always to join this show, especially since you helped buy a t-shirt. Anyway, I want to move on since you've covered the Sens. I just want to ask Sens questions for the beginning before we get into some great stories.
Sure.
Is that, let's start with this little bit of a turnaround. They've gone on a run. It looked like they hit rock bottom against Vancouver. Is this smoke and mirrors, or is this a legit turnaround by the Ottawa Senators?
I'm going to say somewhere in the middle. And here's why I'd say that is you needed the game in, was it Carolina, to be stolen. Sometimes to dig out, when you're looking up at rock bottom, it's not just one game that turns it around. It's kind of like a series of events. And I kept thinking to myself, and I know DJ had said it in his media, is like, I need a goalie to step up and maybe just steal one. And Forsberg did that, right? It was like, stand on your head. That game was ugly and scoring chances and stuff. I get some of the analytics sent to me. I'm like, I think they had 26 slot shot. It was like Carolina pressed, and you needed a goalie to steal one. All of a sudden, guys start to go, hold on, we now we know what winning feels like again. And then after that, you're getting some saves. You're getting, we'll call it some favorable bounces. Stützle scores, so that's another scenario where okay, he's squeezing it. He can't find the back of the net. So to me, it took a combination of things to kind of come back at you, but of all the bad puck luck and all the bad mojo that they had that maybe deserved a win or deserved better, it wasn't happening. And then I don't know if they call it a turning point or not, but it just, To me, the game in Carolina where you just got a much needed win, you didn't ask how, because I thought the goalie was brilliant. But this is, I don't want to say it's smoke and mirrors, but it's somewhere in between for me of a team that maybe deserved a little bit more, I guess, results. You know, if you had a save here, or if you had a big play instead of hitting a post earlier in the season, you're not just on that terrible run. So I am seeing them play with a lot more confidence and a lot more jam and a little bit more structure, but there's lots of work to be done. And to be honest, like, I think this is still a work in progress, but you can see some signs of some confidence there. And that's a big thing in the game.
So is this all on Matt Murray, since they sent Matt Murray down and now they've turned things around? You're a goaltender, so I'm going to let you have the floor and you tell me, A, would you have sent Matt Murray down? And B, what does he need to do to his game as a goaltender? You were a former goaltending coach. What's part of his game that needs to get fixed?
Well, I mean, I thought it was, at that point, I thought it was I'll be honest, quite a big move to waive him and send him down. Like, maybe they felt they needed something to jolt the whole dressing room, jolt the organization. And you're looking at a guy that, you know, had a good training camp, but then gets injured, then gets COVID. And then, you know, like, there was just, you couldn't get him going. So, and then you rely on him and then he's not playing very well. So I think they probably internally was like, we need to not only reset the organization, but we need to reset that player. So you waive him, you send him to the minors. I would see now, you know, the team continued on the slide, and I would see Matt Murray trending in the Ottawa area, and people going, well, how are they going to blame this loss on Matt Murray when he's in Belleville? And I don't know if you guys had the same thing. I would kind of like, you know, I'm sitting there watching some of Sens Twitter going, I wonder how Dorian's going to blame Matt Murray for this loss and stuff. I think what they were looking at is Matt Murray, they were hoping was part of the solution and not part of the problem. And they felt that he was he wasn't the whole problem, but his situation, how much they're paying him, what they traded for to get him, they expected more from him. So sometimes you do need something to jar, you know, some reality back into the group. I thought it was a really aggressive move. I didn't see it coming personally. And I happened to be on the road with the team. And then, you know, all of a sudden the next day it happened. So that's just the organizational standpoint. From Matt Murray's standpoint, I think he needs to get healthy physically and mentally. You know, this half of goaltending, Mark, you could speak to this. You've been around a lot of guys that when you watch their game get between their ears, I'm trying to say this respectfully. The minute you start to think the game, you're in trouble because you don't react. You don't let your talent take over. I think Matt Murray's a talented goaltender, but there were times I'm watching him and I almost thought he was thinking in the net where you're like, you can't think. The minute you start to think, you're paralyzed. You're like, I can't move. I'm behind the play because I'm not reacting. I'm going, what should I do next? And the minute you go, what should I do next? It's already by you, or the play has already gone by. It's so quick. So I think he needs the reset. He needs to be away from the pressure of a team that was struggling. So you get him to Belleville, try and get him playing, but health physically and mentally is the number one thing for him. The technical aspect, it's riding a bike. Like, you can clean that up through video. You can clean that up through just repetition and habits. He hasn't had that repetition and habits because he's been in COVID protocol, or he's been injured. And so you don't get 2 weeks of full practice of going, hey, you know what, this is what it looks like on a partial breakaway out of the corner. This is what I would do on a 2-on-1. It's like, hey, I'm sick, I'm hurt, and then I've got one practice and I'm thrown into a game. To me, I think he just needs a full reset, and he needs time. And it's not just a 1 week fix and you're right back in. I think it's like almost they should lay out a plan of like, hey, what does the next 6 to 8 weeks of your life look like? And if we can keep you healthy physically and mentally, it's a rebuild, a reset. So I'm hoping that for him, because at 27 years old, you don't just forget how to play goal. You don't forget how to be a top tier guy, but something had to give, and unfortunately, it's a very public thing. It's a very embarrassing thing, I'm sure, but ultimately, I don't know how you guys thought about this. The first thing I thought about, when you go to the minors, you don't pay escrow. So I'm like, he's actually making more money. Yes, exactly. It happened to me too. In I think 2000 or 2001, Minnesota sent me down, and I went from the state of Minnesota to the state of Texas in Houston. I was like making 8% more on, like, I think I was making like 1.4 at the time. I'm like, holy smoke, the check looks a lot better. Oh, no escrow, and no state tax. And so it was kind of funny. I thought to myself, no amount of money can, take away the love for the game, but certainly could help a little 8% boost or a 10% boost. So I hope Matt, maybe takes some solace in that, put it that way.
And Noodles, I know because we're hammering down on Murray right now, but one more little thing. What does that do mentally? Like, is there a little animosity now between the two? And I'm not trying to dig anything up by any means, but I know, like, the guy's got a great resume, tons of success at the NHL level, obviously. So now how does he approach this? Because we saw some of the reports early on, and he had some quotes that you could probably read between the lines a little bit. So how does he bounce back properly and come back up and be engaged with this group?
Noodles, before you answer, I just want to say, I think this is a turning point for our show. Now, Meth is asking questions like a media member, and I'm so excited that he asked a question like this. So I just want to take a moment to appreciate this and how this has played out. Anyway, you can answer.
Wally, I know where you live, Wally. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Be careful, Wally. Be careful. You know what? I read the same quotes. You could read between the lines. Absolutely, there's animosity. He's a guy who's had so much success at a young age. This is all new for him. So I think, and again, I can't speak for, Pierre Dorion or Pierre McGuire or DJ Smith, but I would think in maybe a candid moment, if you ask them, they want him to go down and have a collective F you. I'm going to come back and show you. Sometimes it's like an organization is like, hey, we're going to pat you on the back. We're going to protect you. We're going to do all this stuff. And sometimes, they look at that like parenting and go, you know what, you might need a stern talking to. You might need a different approach. This has been their different approach with him. I think from a business standpoint, they were like, we feel we've done everything we can with that player other than trying this. So they're trying that, and if it works and he gets his game back and comes up, we'll look on repairing the relationship of the overall what's happened. We'll call it the embarrassment of being sent down and waived. Right. But I think that it's almost like it's that was their last straw. Like, this is our last attempt to help the player, come into this organization that, and I think that there is a financial component too. Like, we're paying you $6.25 million. Yes. We've expected more. We expected this. I said this I've said this all along. I thought his first 18 months as a Senator was going to be a rocky road, just based on,
you called it danger pay.
Danger pay, hazard pay, right? So I didn't see it ending up here, but we're 18 months in. Now, where does it go? It can go two ways. It can go really south, and he just plays out the string and hopes that another team grabs him for experience and stuff, or he can rebuild his game. You can rebuild the relationship, and he comes back and is a real key cornerstone to your organization moving forward. That might take 6 months, who knows? But
it's unheard of though. Hey, Noodles, like, is it not sort of unheard of to have a goalie go down? Like, you just don't see that very often, right? Or do you? I don't know what the numbers are.
Here's the only thing I can think of in recent memory. Do you remember Jake Allen in St. Louis was really struggling as a starter? And they gave him, the team went to Winnipeg and they left him back and said, we're going to give him a mental reset. So, like, don't even come with team to Winnipeg. You take 2 weeks. We've seen it with, Carey Price. Obviously his struggles are much more public now, but I think there has been a time where Carey Price has needed a reset and like, hey, We're going to have him, he's going to be not a healthy scratch, but we're going to have him stay back on the road trip and work with the goalie coach and get his game back. Like you've heard stories like that. And I know of other situations in the NHL that they're not public, so I won't say the name or anything, but I know of two other goaltenders where the organization has said he's not available or he's nursing something, where I know it's actually been a reset for that player.
Yep.
So, this is just much more public because they put they put Murray on waivers. It's like a statement. Hey, you know what? Whoever wants to take him, you can take him. If not, he's going to Belleville to work his game out. So there's kind of a statement by the organization there too. But I have seen it with other goaltenders, but just maybe not. I think there's been a different layer of we'll call sensitivity to it, or just a different approach to it. Put it that way.
Sure.
I want to move on. Well, there was lots of talk about should there be changes in the front office with the Ottawa Senators and whether DJ Smith or whatnot, but there has been a few changes in other front offices and in Canada with the Canadiens and with Vancouver. You've played with Travis Green, so I know you know him really well. Can you, I know this would probably take 3 days, but can you tell us what happened with Vancouver that perhaps they stopped listening to him because he just got an extension, and how you think Bruce Boudreau will now do in there?
Well, I'll work backwards. I think Bruce Boudreau will be fine there. You're good, but we'll have to wait 10 to 15 games to figure out once the dust settles, because they're going to get that new coach bump. All of a sudden, I'm watching the game last night. Brock Besser hasn't scored, in forever. One goes in off of Doughty's foot. Like, where was that last week? You know what I mean? Like, Thatcher Demko all of a sudden looks like Thatcher Demko in the bubble. He's making saves on his back and rolling around. Pettersson looked more engaged and dangerous. So sometimes we'll call it the new coach bump. So I think Boudreau's going to have success. We'll see how long it lasts or how that looks 10 to 15 games from now, once his coaching style gets implemented. I think Travis Green is a fantastic coach, and that's not just me being biased. I mean, I played with him in junior when he was a high scoring prima donna. And then I played in the NHL with him where he had settled in as a third line center who was really good two-way. The one thing that I've talked to the Vancouver players about is they like that he was a good communicator. He's a former player that could relate to them. I think sometimes the message gets stale, but if you ask me in a candid moment, which is this right now, what is he supposed to do with Pettersson? Like, Pettersson doesn't look like himself. Like, here's a guy that just got a contract. He's getting paid. I think he's a fantastic player, but he's not scoring. He's not an impact player at critical times. So it's the chicken or the egg. Travis, I've talked to coaches about this ad nauseum, where they're like, I need that guy, so I'm going to play the hell out of him, but he's not playing well. So I need to take him away from my lineup, or maybe limit his minutes because he's hurting my team instead of helping him. But then when I need a big goal, I got to put him out there again. So it's like, and when they're not producing, it's like, it looks crazy because you're like, why is Pettersson there? I think it was it last week where they had a 6-on-5 situation at the end of the game. Greeny didn't have him on the ice because, and people are like, why is Pettersson not on the ice? Well, if you took Pettersson off the back of his jersey and said Joe Schmotz, well, Joe Schmotz hasn't been producing. So why would he be on at a critical time? So I think there were so many different things that Travis was trying, but at some point your message gets stale. The penalty kill stunk, which I don't know what happened to there, but I'm not going to take credit for this. O-Dog always says this on our show. How many times has the goaltender saved the players from a video session? I mean, Meth, you can talk about this. Anton Forsberg saved, the Senators from a video session, getting outshot 49-23 the other day. They came out, a win's a win. No video tomorrow because guess what? We won that game. So, you needed Demko to play a little bit better. I looked at their underlying numbers. I mean, it seemed like Quinn Hughes's numbers were actually better this year than last year as far as underlying and stuff, which is good. But not everyone was playing well. So, Brock Besser hadn't scored in 15 games. How's that Travis's fault? JT Miller, I know, was vocal in practice saying, we don't know what the hell we're doing out there. Is that a slight on the coach, or is that a slight on his peers who don't know how to execute a drill that has been drawn up. So I think at some point it just was like it wasn't working. A change was needed. It's easier to move the coach than it is to move 3 or 4 underachieving players.
Yeah, agreed.
It is interesting. Are you surprised with the change in Philadelphia with Alain Vigneault being out? Did they
Yes.
quit on him? Because listening to
I don't think so, Wally. They didn't quit on him. They like him.
After that 7-1 loss, though, they came out and said that's when we thought we had to make a change.
Well, you're right, Wally. But when people ask me that question, I can honestly say, me as a player at 17 years, not once did I get up and head to the rink and go, you know what? I hate the coach. I'm not going to play today, because it reflects on me as a pro.
Yeah,
like
sure.
there are coaches along the way who I thought were complete idiots, but they were still the coach. And you may have disagreed with the philosophy that they had, but it's not like they weren't trying. And the minute that I put my jersey on, I was trying to stop the puck every way I could. I wasn't going, you know what, not today, because that coach hurt my feelings or did this and that. So I understand the premise when people say, you know, that the players quit. They may not like the coach. They may not like what's going on. But I would say there's deeper rooted problems in Philadelphia than just Alain Vigneault. And Chuck Fletcher came out this summer. I remember reading an article and him saying last year's, they'll call it debacle, was on him, where he thought their D-core was too young. So what does he do? He addresses it. He goes and gets Ristolainen, he gets Ellis, he adds Keith Yandel into his mix. All of a sudden, they're a veteran D-core that looked a lot better on paper. But I said this, I actually was speaking about Philadelphia this morning to a player in the league. We were just he was like, man, that's a mess over there. Like, what do you hear? And I was like, honestly, there's got to be deep-rooted issues within that whole group there. Like, and I'm not calling out Claude Giroux because he's a captain, but there just seems to be something that doesn't seem right, whether it's their commitment to work ethic, their systematic play. Like, you don't just drop off a cliff. There's people that are, you know, hard on the Islanders. I'll be honest, the Islanders have a bunch of built-in excuses, injuries, COVID, you name it, 13-game road trip to start the season. The New York Islanders look different to me than Philadelphia, than Vancouver, because those two teams that just had coaching changes had deep-rooted problems that you couldn't just put your finger on one thing and go, it's that player, it's that player, it's that system. And all of a sudden you're pointing to like 10 or 12 things. When I think of Philadelphia, I'm like, it looked good on paper. It sounded good at the start of the season. I'm like, I like some of the moves they made. You know, Voracek for Cam. I think that Atkinson's a really underrated player, hard to play against, could score. I like some of their moves. It just hasn't worked out. And you can go back and go, well, they can't defend and the goalie's too young and he's not stopping pucks and that. Again, it's easy to just go AV, you're out, instead of going 4 or 5 guys from that situation who either aren't buying in or who aren't producing. We got to move them. So a different voice will be interesting to see how things unfold there.
Okay, I have a question about voices because you've played for, and I meant to add up the number of coaches, but it's a long list.
A long list.
What was the craziest team that you played on in terms of just dysfunction? Or can you even name me that? And I don't mean about head coach. I just mean in general, you talk about there's something amiss with Philadelphia. Did you play on one of those teams?
Well, no, I mean, I have, but like funny dysfunction, like crazy players and stuff like that. Like the minor leagues are full of them. Like I laugh, like you point, like name me an AHL team that doesn't have like 1 or 2 like minor league, crazy people on him. I played with this guy named Frank the Animal by Lois. I mean, he was my teammate. I was afraid of him, that type of stuff. Like the AHL, you want to talk about a development league as far as just professionally as a player, but it develops you off the ice. You're like, holy smokes, like that. A lot of times, because financially guys are all kind of in the same, you're making X amount of dollars. So everyone kind of lives in the same complex, and everyone, hey, what are we doing for dinner today? Well, it's Subway, because everyone's got $7 to spend, and and they all kind of hang out in the complex. And so dysfunction is like, it's every day in the AHL, but it actually, like, it's good dysfunction, because you're like, I'll never forget it. I was talking about getting sent down. I was 30 years old, making pretty good one-way contract in Minnesota. They sent me down to Houston. All of a sudden, my number one defenseman is this kid named Travis Roach, who was like out of college, really talented. And he lived in the complex, like kind of next to me. And we're on our way to the game. He's driving this Dodge Viper. He's eating McDonald's. I'm like, that's my number one defenseman. Guy's shooting on a Big Mac on his way to the game. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, of course he's chewing on a Big Mac. He's 20 and he's from college. Like, he has no idea what it's like yet, and it's just like that. If you want to term that dysfunction, that's dysfunction, because it's kind of like funny, because you're like, I can't wait to see what this guy's going to be like at 24 when the light goes on and goes, hey, I'm a pro and I'm actually a pretty good player, And so some guys, when I had them at a young age, you see which way they go, but it may not be the dysfunction, like everyone hates each other or whatever. It's just like, I get to Minnesota, we're in expansion. We have this kid, Marian Gaborik, who is just an unbelievable player. He's 18. I remember, like 10 minutes before warm-up, they would bring in, like snacks for the wives and stuff. And for some reason, I like walk across the hallway and I look, and there's Gabby sitting on the couch eating a brownie, like 10 minutes before we're going for warm-up. I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to be doing that, But he said, oh, free food. Like, he's all fired up that there's free food. I'm like, hey, you're going to make so much money in this game. You can have your house catered with brownies every day. But I'm like, I don't think you should be eating a brownie 10 minutes before we go out. Like, but that's the type of stuff. Like, it just, I guess dysfunction is the wrong word. It's just unique. Everyone has unique individuals, and the AHL, it really does, like, it helps you grow up on and off the ice, and it's a real good developmental league, just so that it gets you prepared for the next level.
Yes, Meth spent some time in Syracuse, New York. Hey, Meth. Travis Roach, by the way, played 60 NHL games. That's how his career went. I'm to ask you, and I don't know if I'm going to set this up properly, but about a mascot. Is it the Islander mascot? Is there a story regarding a mascot in you?
Yes, and it's a very famous story, and we're allowed to swear on here because there has to be some swear words that come with it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I get drafted by the Islanders in 91. I get to the Islanders organization. My head coach in the minors is Butch Goring. The head coach at the NHL level is Al Arbor. The goaltender coach for the organization is Billy Smith. And, obviously the reputation precedes himself. Like, there's this grizzled, like, tough as nails goalie coach. And everything about Smitty was like percentages. So you stand here and 7 out of 10 will hit you. Don't ever let them come around your crease. You make sure, like he had all these little things, and it was kind of, it was intimidating, but it really helped me because he was all about mental preparation. He's like, the game is up here. If you think it, and if you're ahead of them, you'll be able to handle everything. So I'll never forget, I get, I'll cut this part and make it short, but I got sent to the East Coast League for the weekend, and they wanted me. There was 5 goalies in the system, and they had 3 at the NHL level because Mark Fitzpatrick had an illness, a rare illness, that when he would get sick, he would get sent to the minors so he could recover. And that would bump me to the East Coast League. So I would go down for the weekend, I would play. And what happened is Glenn Healy ended up hurting his finger. And I get called up from the East Coast League to the NHL. I stay there for the night, and they finally, because they got to fill a void, they send me to the AHL. And I get out to the Rock. It's Toronto's team. I think it's St. John's. St. John's Maple Leafs. Yeah.
St. John's.
St. John's Maple Leafs. So I get out there, and we're playing on a Tuesday and Thursday. So I go and join the team, and Butch Goring's the coach. Billy Smith is the goalie coach. So I get out there and I start the Tuesday game. So I go skating out, and I know Smitty's there, and I want to impress. And as I go to scrape my crease, there is like this bird of a mascot. His name was Buddy the Puffin. It's like this weird shaped like bird. And he's like doing this hex and like kind of like skating towards me. And I'm like, all right, I'm just trying to like focus for the game. So I'm scraping my crease, and he would come near the crease, and I would like push him out of the way. And it was just weird. He was being annoying. So that first period, I like stand on my head. I'm like feeling really good. After the first period, I go in the dressing room. I come out for the second period, and the bird is in the crease, like standing in my crease, like doing a hex. And I got to skate like the whole, the second period, you got to skate all the way down. So I skate down. I give him a push. He pushes me back, and I'm like, this is weird. But the crowd's kind of getting into it, and I'm scraping my crease. I didn't even think anything about it. So end up having really good period. Third period comes out. He's there again. I push him. He kind of pushes me back. And I stand in my head. I don't know the score. I think James Duthie ended up looking it up. But like in my head, I think we won like 3-1 or 5-2 or something. And I got like a star. And I thought I made like 35 saves, and I was like unbelievable that night. And I am so proud. I'm like, hey, I just put a show on in front of my goalie coach. And so I come off, I'm the last guy off because I was a star. And I go into the room, and the guy's like, hey, Noodles, and I go to, and in my stall is Billy Smith. And he's like, I need to talk to you in the hallway right now. And I was like, all right, and I'm thinking, oh, he doesn't want to give me all the accolades in front of everyone. He takes me out in the hallway, and I'm standing there, and he's like, don't you ever let that fucking bird stand in your crease again. And I was like, what? Like, I'm like, I just got first star. And he's like, if that fucking bird's there on Thursday, he's like, you take him out. And I'm like, what? Like, and honest to God, I'm not lying. Like, it's a Tuesday night. I didn't sleep a wink that night. He's like tore a strip off of me. And we practiced the next day. And all I keep thinking about is like, what am I going to do with this bird? Like, and
yeah.
And I'm hoping like, okay, maybe I'm not going to start Thursday because, maybe I'll start the other guy. So as he's skating around before practice, I'm looking out of the corner of my eye, and I'm watching Butch Goring, and I'm trying to avoid him because I'm waiting for him to skate up and go like, I'm going to start the other guy. He skates up to me, he goes, Noodles, you're playing tomorrow. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I'm not even thinking about the game. I'm thinking about this stupid bird. So I swear to God, next game. So Thursday comes, game. I get out there for the first period. Like the bird is kind of like, hexing me. I'm like all locked in. They score like 4 goals in the first period. And I'm just brutal. Like I should get pulled. They should pull me. I swear to God, I think my mind, Billy Smith told Butchie to keep me in to see how I had handled this bird. So after the first period, I come out, and the bird is in my crease giving me the hex. And I was like, fuck this. So I take off 200 feet, and I run the bird out of I literally hit him as hard as I could. And this bird goes flying into the corner, and the crowd goes crazy. And I don't know if there's a 14-year-old girl in there. There's an 85-year-old man. Like, I have no idea who this bird is. And I bury this bird, and the crowd is on me. I think we lost like 7-1 that night, and they left me in, and the crowd was giving it to me. And I was just rattled the whole night. I come after the game, and Smitty's in my stall with a smile on his face. And I'm like, yeah, sorry. He takes me out in the hallway. He's like, that's how you be a man in this league. And I'm like, oh my God, I just gave up a touchdown. I literally just gave up a touchdown. And he was like, no, you show them. You show them how you can be. And I was like, unbelievable. Like that. I'll never forget that. But like to this day, people from St. John's still send me notes going like, this Buddy the Puffin is like their mascot out there. Like it's, that's the guy or whatever.
That's one of the best stories I'm not just saying that, by the way, especially like on ice. And that is a testament to what it's like, especially then, like, well, you're like, that was over 10 years before I got to the A, but like I feel like in the American League, it was such an important thing. Like our coaching staff, I can still remember Gary Agnew and a couple guys that were coaching us in Syracuse, and we had a team full of like WWE guys. Like it was a shit show, and it's all they fucking cared about was just like the sideshow stuff, the fights, the hits. Like it was such a priority over everything else, and it was like living in the Twilight Zone. So hearing that just resonates with me. I totally understand it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was. I'll never forget it. Smitty was like, the smile on his face, it was like a proud father. I was like, all right, well, I'm like, just so I can remind you, I just gave up a touchdown, like 7, like not,
7 goals.
So anyways, it was kind of funny because and years later, I love Billy Smith. He was so good. I had him for the first 2 years, I think, in my career. And he was just he was good for me on the mental aspect, being a pro, how to treat people, how to approach the game, how serious he needed to take it. There were so many lessons I learned from him, but like, I don't know if I take a lesson that night. I just more think it's a funny story, so.
That's great.
And we've said this before, you've played with so many stars with Yager and Brett Hull, and I could go on, and Jerome McGinley and whatnot. I haven't heard too many stories about Brett Hull from players, but I hear lots of stories from outside. So can you tell me what Brett Hull was like as a player to play with?
Unbelievable. Like Hully was one of the smartest players, like cerebral, that I've ever played with. Like he's the type of guy that you walk into the dressing room and he's doing like the New York Times crossword and just like it figured. Yeah. Like just so smart. But, Hully's best attribute could also be viewed as his worst, is he had no filter. So like he would just, whatever he thought in his mind, he would say. And, sometimes you're like, whoa, that's a little harsh, or, so it was, but he was also self-deprecating. Like he would be having an off game and he'd announce in the room, guys, don't pass me the puck. I'm brutal tonight. I'm awful. I'll try and be better, but I'm no good. But then there were other times he'd be yelling at, a Pierre Turgeon, you didn't see me. I'm there. Hit me. I've scored 86. I've scored 86. You get me the puck and that's going to go in the net. And he's like, it's matter of fact. And it's so true, but you're like, whoa, you're thinking, okay, like, he has the confidence to say that because it is true. And he's just pointing out a fact, but it's, there's other ways to approach it. Like for me, I just would never, not that I was ever as talented as Brett Hull, but he saw things differently. And he was really funny. Like we had this defenseman on our team, Chris McAlpine, we called him the Mule. And like Hully would walk by the stick rack and he'd just look at people's sticks. And like Mule was a stay-at-home defenseman and had like this big 2x4, and he would just pick up the Mule stick and look at him and go, no wonder. Like he'd just say, no wonder. Like, no wonder I can't get a direct pass. No wonder like you can't take a shot. Like he would just look at it and just drop it and walk away. Like he just, I honestly, I have a soft spot for Hully because he was, he knew I was young and single at the time when I played with him in St. Louis, and like Christmas Eve, he'd be like, you're coming with me. Like, I'm like, it's Christmas Eve, family. He's like, no, kids are going to sleep. You and I are going to go for a beer. And all of a sudden we're at karaoke at the Cheshire Inn in St. Louis at like midnight, I'm like, this is great. I'm with Brett Hull, like it was, he was such a unique individual, but so talented, but like, I was there when him and Keenan were going at it, and then Keenan got fired, and then Joel Quenneville came in. So, I was played, good 3 years with him where, just the comments left and right, but like very funny, but just very matter of fact. And I love that about him because as you know, you guys know, sometimes you just never know where you stand with guys, because sometimes it's, they're trying to be politically correct or, nice, where he just go, you stink tonight, or I stink tonight, or, it's just kind of funny. I always liked Holly.
Noodles, I've always heard this. I always remembered this, obviously never played against him or anything, but some of his practice habits where you'd be going up the wall, and if a D-man couldn't hit him with a pass properly, he wouldn't move his blade. He'd just give you that 1,000-yard stare down. You know what I mean? Like just looking at you, like, what are you doing, you pigeon? Hit me. I guess that's the kind of guy he was.
So true, but it would be, because if I don't know if Matt, if you miss a guy, sometimes they take their glove off and put it on the end of their stick. If you've missed it so far, I would do stuff where he just the guy would miss him by 10 feet. He'd just throw his stick at the puck. What do you want me to do with that? He just, I love it. But you know what? That's the characters in hockey. I know with social media and, so much coverage, it probably be frowned upon, where Holly was so good for team chemistry. He was so good because it was hey, here's a guy who expects more out of me, out of the backup goaltender, and he expects more because he holds himself to a standard. He's holding you to a standard. So I took it that way. Never once, was Holly ever, condescending or anything like that. It was just how he was just a very matter-of-fact person. And I think sometimes that may get misconstrued as to, especially in today's world, how people view everybody through a certain lens. I don't view him that way. I think if he was in today's game, I'm sure his thought process would be different as opposed to 10, 15 years ago. That's just life. Yeah. But I laugh because I don't think those characters are in the forefront now, because it might get turned around, their thoughts or their views.
Oh yeah. Well, it's frowned upon. Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Okay. So last time you were on the show, you talked about grilling cheese sandwiches with Kid Rock. I know you're good friends with Chad Kroeger from Nickelback. Have you been backstage with any ridiculous stories that have happened at a Nickelback concert that you can share?
Yeah, I mean,
that he could share. That's
let me think here. Yeah, that I can share.
You know what? By the way, before you do that, I was at the Nickelback concert at MSG, which I know you were actually on the floor. I didn't know at the time. It was one of the best concerts I've actually ever seen, and to be at MSG for it was phenomenal. Anyway, that's my little Nickelback story. But I think
the cool thing about that show is I had ordered Steph's engagement ring in Chicago from a buddy, and I needed it to be delivered somewhere. I couldn't have it delivered cross border, so I had it delivered to MSG. And the Nickelback guys accepted it for me. I went down, we drank all night, and then I flew back home the next day with Steph's ring. So it was, it was kind of cool because, and I had no problem because I had a U.S. resident. There was no declaring it I had a U.S. resident and stuff, so I declare it on my U.S. side. So there was no sneaking it across the border. It's just at that time, I needed a place to get sent to. So I was like, their manager's like, well, flip it to me, send it to the hotel. We'll bring it down to the show. So I got there, had a, bottle of vodka and picked up a ring. So it ended up working out good. But yeah, backstage. So one time I'm playing with the Panthers, and they're playing at the Hard Rock in Florida, I guess, Hollywood, Florida. And so Chad calls me and he goes, we're staying the night. So he goes, you want to plan an after party? And I said, well, I think we're playing that night. So I said, I'll zip over to the show after our game and, we'll have a night. And so we set it up. There's some baseball players there. One who I think was not supposed to be, I think there was a judge or a court order. He wasn't supposed to be drinking. And I was like, that guy is definitely drinking. I remember seeing that guy. I can't remember his name, but Venus Williams was there, and she was a show, a fan of the band. So it's weird because I'm just hanging out with Chad, and I know all of those guys, Chad's brother Mike and Ryan Peake. these guys are literally Alberta boys, right? So it's not, they're, if I didn't grow up with them, I basically, we have crossover on so many different levels. So we treat it like that. But then all of a sudden, like, hey, big star walks in, like, hey, let's have a drink or whatever. So I remember just turning around and like, that's Venus Williams. And she was like, just loving the show, hanging out, drinking. Like, I don't know if she was drinking. Actually, I should, because I don't think she was training, but her trainer was there. And she was like, seemed like she was partying or dancing or whatever. But like, I remember seeing her going, what a weird scenario, like how much reach that band has, because you just never know who's going to show up at the show. And so it was Venus Williams.
That's cool. Really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Like,
I meant to bring this up earlier. Can you tell me the story again about how you almost burned down Commonwealth Stadium, if I'm not mistaken?
Wait, what?
No. I saved Commonwealth Stadium from burning down. So there would be no stadium if it wasn't for me. So growing up, I have two older brothers, and one of my brother's best friends was the number two equipment guy for the Edmonton Eskimos. His name was Robbie Strecker. And I got to know Dwayne Mandrusiak, their head equipment guy and equipment manager. So when I was a kid, like 16 years old, they were me for 2 weeks during CFL training camp in June to help Joey Moss. So I was basically the laundry boy for 2 weeks, me and Joey Moss. And I would drive the truck and they would practice off-site. So at that time they were called, the Eskimos, but now they're the Elkies. So I'll just call them the Elkies for respect situation. So that time the Elkies practiced at Concordia College right around the corner. So my job was to get there in the morning. There would be these 60 people at camp. So they would all throw their underwear and towels into these big things. We would roll them out to the truck, me and Joey, throw them back in the truck, take them to Commonwealth, put them in a giant washer, giant dryer, fold them, bring them back for the second practice. So there was 2 a days. So I don't know, like lunch was at noon. I had taken the first batch back. Joey stayed back. So it's just me. And what I used it as when I was 16 and 17, like I had Commonwealth Stadium to myself. Like there was a gym, there was satellite TV, and there was a track and everything. So I would actually like work out. Like I was, believe me, I wasn't in great shape as a hockey player, but like it was my training in the summer, those 2 weeks. So I'll never forget this. I had the load of wash in and then the dryer running, and there's these giant dryers, like giant. And I'm sitting there at Dwayne Mandrusiak's desk and watching TV, and I hear this like pop, and I'm like, that's weird. So I go into the laundry room, and the dryer, right then, a giant ring of like light came out and landed in front of me, and I could see that the dryer was on fire. So I went to stop it, and the door popped open and the underwear went on me. So all of a sudden I'm on fire. So I like stopped, dropped, and rolled. So I'm rolling around, like putting the fire out. And then it was like clockwork, because the dryer was still spinning. It was spitting out underwear on fire into like the room. So now the room starts like, I'm like, oh my God. So I run back, and unfortunately I had locked myself out of the equipment room because the door closed behind me. So I had to dive through the window and get in there. I call 911, and I'm like, there's a fire at Commonwealth Stadium, get down here. So as I go back, the dryer lint thing had popped open, and that was on fire. And so I'm like, what do I do? I can't find a extinguisher. So I ran and I hooked up this garden hose to like the sink in the bathroom, like 2 doors down. And I've run this garden hose, and it's literally just pissing out water, like just like dropping out water. And I'm trying to stick my finger in it and like spray. And there's like smoke billowing out, and like my arm had been, my shirt was charred, and like, I don't know, I was battling it. All of a sudden, over top of my shoulder comes like a a fire extinguisher and that, and the fire department had arrived maybe a couple minutes later. So there was this big fire, and I've got like soot all over my face, and like my shirt's like burnt, and I like, and these guys underwear had burned. Like they, a bunch of guys like, they put in their underwear into the bag or whatever, like a bunch of them had burned.
Yeah.
So they called Dwayne, and they were like, there was a fire, and, Noodles kind of helped put it out, even though I was sitting there with a garden hose that was just like dropping out. But it was weird. I was supposed to go out that night with my buddies, and they were all waiting at my house, and I got home and I had like soot all over my face, and like my hair was all messed up, and my shirt was burned. And anyways, like back then you don't text or whatever. I was 16 or 17 years old. It was like 35 years ago. So, but I always say in the next day in the Edmonton Journal, it was like, Eskimos laundry burned in, at fire at Commonwealth. And then they mentioned like laundry boy saved it or something like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I still maintain that I helped save Commonwealth from burning to the ground.
That's awesome. Is that your last summer job, by the way?
No, I always worked since I was like, honest to God, like 10 years old. 12, I used to mow lawns for senior citizens. That had a bad ending. Because I ran over this lady's garden by accident. I slipped and fell, and the mower rolled down the hill. And
oh boy!
Went right through her garden. And old people, they're watching you out the window. She came bombing out.
Yeah,
I'll never forget it. Mrs. Franco, she's like yelling at, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, I just almost got run over by a lawnmower here. But I delivered pizza at 16. That didn't go well too, because I had just moved to Lethbridge, Alberta. There was no GPS back then, and I ended up delivering to like a clubhouse, a biker's clubhouse. 12 pizzas, 90 minutes late. So, so the guy opened the door. He'd already had a fight with my manager, and my manager had told him F off. So I get here. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, your pizza's a little late." He's like, "You know what I'm going to do with those pizzas? I'm going to shove them right up your ass." So I was like, oh. So I had some rough jobs, but my last job, like kind of before I turned pro, my dad's company helped build the Cross Cancer Institute in Edmonton, and he was mechanical and electrical. So he always would get me on as a plumber's assistant or, like a laborer and stuff. And I think he did this. It was a really interesting thing. They were building like an interstitial, so they had to dig a 6-foot trench underneath the parquet. So he had me do that for 2 weeks straight, and like just digging a 6-foot trench, like gritty, hard, like laborious work. And I remember my dad was a really, like calm, kind of laid back individual, very supportive of my career, but never was really involved in it. Just said, do your best. You always just say, work hard, do your best. And I remember I was getting drafted that year, and that was my last job. And he said, go work hard at hockey. And he goes, know that job will always be there for you. And it was like, hey, that's a hardworking, honest job. But if you want to be successful at hockey, it's going to take harder work than that. And it was kind of like a message, cool. Like, yeah. So that was my last, like, kind of real job, was working as a laborer for Comstock International. So it was a message, and I knew that work would always be there, but like my dad kind of wanted a little bit more.
Very nice. Last question I have for you. What was your first big purchase with your first NHL contract?
A Nissan 300 ZX.
Oh, very nice.
Twin turbo. And it had what's called a Steve Millen. He was a racing car system, exhaust system on it. That gave it like extra horsepower. So it was like 360 horsepower. And I hit a raccoon with it, and it shattered the front end, which didn't go well. I'm driving from New York to Edmonton, 45 hours. I get outside Chicago, Rockford, Illinois. There's a raccoon standing there in the middle of the road. And I'm like, all right.
Oh, no.
And of course, this car is made of like fiberglass. So it like just, broke the front end and all that. But it just, but that was like my first purchase. I will say, like, I didn't have a huge signing bonus in that, but like I wanted to give my parents a little bit of money. Did that. Then I bought this vehicle, which I sold a couple of years later because it was completely impractical. You couldn't drive it in snow or anything like that. But it was like, hey, my first vanity dumb purchase. And, I think every guy goes through that,
Yes.
it's unfortunate. I remember one of my good friends at the time playing junior, hang up the phone. He's like, it's at the payphone at the bar. We're at Esmeralda's in Edmonton. He's on the payphone with his parents, and he had just signed with Chicago. And he turns and he goes, drinks for the bar. And then he goes, I have no money. You don't sign your contract and deposit money into your account. Like you get your signing bonus, 4 months later or whatever.
Yeah.
So this
Takes a
idiot
while.
buys the bar drinks and he has zero money. So we had to put it on my credit card. So it happens.
Noodles. I love these stories. I could talk to you all day long. So we'll just have to make another date and have you back on again, but we appreciate the time, my friend.
All right. No problem. Thanks for having me. Yeah, let's do a Noodles 3.0 at some point when you guys have worked through your way through the A list. You can get back down to me.
You'll always be at the top. By the way, before we go, we love your show. It is one of the best things on radio, and now it's on TV, of course. Overdrive is phenomenal, and we appreciate the work you guys do. It's hilarious to listen to. So much thanks for the entertainment value you guys give every day.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll chat soon.
Take care, Noodles. All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks once again to Jamie McLennan. Meth, have you ever beaten up a mascot?
No, I haven't. That story was hilarious, though. We had a couple tweets. So there's a couple people that reached out and were suggesting we ask him about it. I'm like, I'd never heard of this before. So awesome for him to share that with us. I had a good laugh.
Yeah, and the fact that Billy Smith is part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
He was my guy growing up. I had a black Coho goalie stick because of Billy Smith.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Awesome.
So, Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. That was a great interview, guys. That was, man, again, those are the ones like we talked about with Andre Waugh the week before. Like, time it's just some ripping stories. Like, those are the best. My notes are always like ridiculous, right? You're just like, what the heck? But you watch them back, and yeah, they're the best. I love those. Sitting back on those. So nice work there, boys. Hey, you know who else is back? Bonesaw Sauce Co. We were talking about that earlier. There's some tasty stuff, and you know what? We worked it out with them. We got a little deal now. So if anybody out there looking to dabble into some hot sauce, maybe find some stuff for Christmas, head on over to bonesawsauceco.com and use the coupon code WHAM. You get 15% off your order from their website there. So hey, if you got a minute, go check it out. Grab some stuff. Support the show. Support a great little local brand before the holidays, and grab yourself some hot sauce. But if you're like, I'm going to wait a little bit here, we're going to give some stuff away too. So Trivial Trivia is back. Brent kind of teased that off the top there. And I mean, this one, if you watch the Jamie McLennan interview, you're going to know the answer to this one. But we're giving away kind of a Christmas prize pack from Bonesaw Sauce Co. If you know the answer to this question, which is, what is the actual name of the St. John's Maple Leafs mascot? If you know that, head on over to Twitter, use the hashtag Wally and Methot, and just for the answer, you can win yourself one of these Bonesaw Sauce Co. prize packs. They're delicious, right in time for the holidays too. So head on over to Twitter and put your answers in now. If you know what it is, and if you don't, go back and rewatch it, because that was kind of the highlight of that interview, I think. So
yeah, it was pretty.
Anyways, yeah, it was pretty good. It's hot. It was a hot one. I don't know. I'm trying to loop it all back in here with a pun, but I can't do it at this time.
Yeah, that was a tough one, Craig.
I'll acknowledge that it was not the best, but what are we gonna do here? Yeah, the first 99% of the show went off without a hitch, so yeah, blow it right at the end here when I show up. So
just a man of the people, Craig. Just a man of the people.
Yeah, not so good at reads.
Perfect. Great show today, boys. Meth, should we bring it up now? You probably don't want to. Lassie Thompson got sent down. I forgot to put this in the beginning of the show. I think it's the right move. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you. I didn't think his game really trended downward that much, but you could see that he kind of peaked a little bit, and then there were a couple missed assignments on the ice, a couple goals, lost puck battles. But I mean, granted, that happens to everybody. But I think they're just being very careful with him. You know, you don't want your top. This is a top prospect in the organization. He's clearly an NHL player. Why rush him right now? There's no point. get him back down there. The A's obviously been doing very well for him. It's working for him. I find it does wonders for defensemen. So he'll go back down there, play with a lot of confidence, maybe come back up at some point, but it doesn't have to be this year. I think it's okay. And I don't see it as a demotion. For me, it's just more development.
Well, more minutes, more situations, right? So
correct.
I'm okay with that move. I think they've done a really good job, I think, of trying to get players up to the next level, right? Of managing those assets to bring them to the NHL level. So I won't argue with that decision whatsoever.
Isn't this how it's supposed to go? Like, aren't guys supposed to come and get a cup of coffee, get a taste, and then bring it back to the AHL? Like, isn't this kind of what I think people are maybe used to? They want to see all these young guys play over vets, but I mean, they still have the opportunity to go down. Isn't that kind of isn't this how it's supposed to work?
Yeah, and I think it's funny because you get a little bit of a taste of it when you come up here to the NHL and you learn, right? You see the other players, you watch your teammates, you see their habits. So it's incredibly beneficial for these call-ups to come up, see what it's like, see what it takes. Then you go back down and apply those same things down there. All of a sudden your game gets another bump, you get better. And then you come back up at some point, you're more prepared, you know what to expect. So at least in my case, that's what it did for me. I knew what I had to do going into the off season because I realized, oh man, it's a little faster up there, or I need to work on my breakout passes, or I need to get a little bit faster, in those corners, or whatever it was that I need to improve on. You get a better self-assessment of where you're at when you do get a little call up, and then you're able to go back down and apply it.
You know what the problem is, though? The first round picks that they started making play right away in the NHL. And it never used to be, right? You never used to see it be like, oh, okay, spend another year in junior or whatever. Not anymore. Now they're in the lineup. So all the other kids are like, why am I not in the NHL? And that's what causes some of the issues. Like Detroit would never put young rookies in the lineup. Like, remember, it would take them forever down in the AHL.
Yeah, they developed all of them. You're right. That's a really good point, Wally. And look where they ended up. So, yeah, it's a good pattern to follow.
It's a different NHL now, that's for sure. All right, boys. Get to the weekend. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Sylvain St. Laurent stopping by. We'll get a chat with him. Sly's always good he tells it like it is. So, and he didn't like our low number of French Canadians, so we're going to up it one more with him on the show. See you on Monday. That's the Wally Methot Show. Thanks for watching.